Marco Rubio, the Republican senator from Florida, is running for re-election next month and has upset the LGBTQAIPK2+ community. One particular drag queen who goes by the name of Little Hot Mess for including him in Rubio's campaign ad, in a surprisingly bold campaign ad.
The radical left will destroy America if we don't stop them. They indoctrinate children, try to turn boys into girls. They allow illegal aliens and drugs to flood into our country. And if you speak out, they ban you on social media and they call you a racist. Congresswoman Val Demings is for all of this.
That's pretty much the gist of it, and it's a great ad. It's too bad that Republicans weren't putting out quality, powerful ads like that back in about 2015 when the communist takeover really started to get ramped up. But better late than never, Marco. So anyway, that drag queen who was pictured there just for a few seconds at a Drag Queen Story Hour is quite upset with Marco Rubio. And you can measure somebody usually by the quality not only of their friends, but by who their enemies are. Here's that same drag queen at a Drag Queen Story Hour event years ago, trying to recruit small little children to become drag queens.
Who wants to be a drag queen when they grow up?
Little Miss Hot Mess.
Who is ready for a story?
Is the host of Drag Queen Story Hour.
That same drag queen co-authored this scholarly article titled Drag Pedagogy. Pedagogy means a tool or a method of teaching the playful practice of queer imagination in early childhood. In recent years, the program for young children called Drag Queen Story Hour has risen to simultaneous popularity and controversy. This article, written collaboratively by an education scholar and a drag queen involved in organizing DQSH, contextualizes the program within the landscape of gender in education, as well as within the world of drag, and argues that Drag Queen Story Hour provides a generative extension of queer pedagogy into the world of early childhood education. Drawing on the work of Jose Esteban Munoz, the authors discuss 5 interrelated elements of Drag Queen Story Hour that offer early childhood educators a way into a sense of queer imagination, play as praxis, aesthetic transformation, strategic defiance, destigmatization of shame, and embodied kinship. Ultimately, the authors propose that drag pedagogy provides a performative approach to queer pedagogy that is not simply about LGBT lives, but living queerly. In other words, that's just scholarly babble for they're indoctrinating the children, they're grooming the children. They openly admit that they're trying to get them to imagine that they might be queer. In 2010, 12 years ago, Adam Carolla released this book, In 50 Years, We'll All Be Chicks, where he accurately prophesied, although his timing was a little bit off, it didn't take 50 years, it only took 10 or 12 years, he said that in the future, children will be bullied for not being gay. And these days, the peer pressure that most students are facing across the country in government schools isn't really to do drugs or to drink alcohol, it is to be queer. Queer, by the way, is not considered to be a slur, at least not anymore. It's a term that these people have embraced. It's an umbrella term that basically means anybody who is not straight. So it encompasses all the 72 different genders and all the different sexual orientations, from pansexual to bisexual to gay and lesbian. And now their queer pedagogy includes having drag queen crossing guards, like this Denver school, which was happily reported by one of the local brand name television affiliates, which is one of the reasons why I never got a job as a local television reporter, because when the network assigns you a story, you have to do that story. These people literally sell their soul. And when the news director tells you that you have to do a story about how great the drag queen crossing guard is, you have to do it. I'm serious, the school hired a drag queen crossing guard. Anything they can do to get close to the children. Here's a recent Harvard education panel talking about how they want to queer up math class.
Well, and in some ways it's connected to what Joe's saying around what I'm hearing you talk about in terms of integration. I think historically we did academics over here and social emotional here and mental health there, and it's like kids have math needs here and they have mental health needs there, and that's kids are harmed in math classes. They feel harm in social studies classes when talking about the curriculum or the absence of curriculum that reflects their social identities. So it is not a separate thing. It is very interconnected, and we have to address it as such.
The kids are harmed in math class because there aren't enough math problems about LGBTQ people. And this is the kind of teacher that is making that happen.
I had a fun little conversation with my students yesterday. For those of you who are new, I am very queer.
What a shock.
I am non-binary and I use they, them pronouns, and my students know this.
Of course they do. Who in their right mind would allow this person to teach their children and be alone with the kids in a room? But math isn't just to heterosexual, it's also to white supremacists. So a liberal think tank put out this 80-page guide for teachers. This is real, by the way, a pathway to equitable math instruction, dismantling racism in mathematics instruction, exercises for educators to reflect on their own biases to transform their instructional practice. This tool provides teachers an opportunity to examine their actions, beliefs, and values around teaching mathematics. The framework for deconstructing racism in mathematics offers essential characteristics of anti-racist math educators and critical approaches to dismantling white supremacy in math classrooms by visibilizing toxic, that's what they said. Maybe the unit in English class, by visibilizing the toxic characteristics of white supremacy culture with respect to math. We see white supremacy culture show up in the mathematics classroom even as we carry out our professional responsibilities outlined in the California Standards for the Teaching Profession. Using California Standards for Teaching Profession as a framework, we see white supremacy culture in the mathematics classroom can show up when the focus is on getting the right answer. It goes on to list a whole other bunch of complaints about math. There's that word pedagogy again. Design a culturally sustaining math space. Use culturally relevant, anti-racist pedagogy practices and curriculum. Cultivate mathematical identity so that everyone can see themselves as mathematicians. Adapt homework policies to fit the needs of students of color. Recognize and name the mathematical successes of students of color and teach them to recognize successes in themselves and others. It just goes on and on. Like I said, for over 80 pages. You know, you learn something every day. I had no idea that math was infused with racism. But speaking of isms, Ben Shapiro is still very upset at Kanye West for comments that he posted on Instagram and Twitter. And by the way, this is a different clip than the one that I showed the other day. He is still quite upset, as you can see.
I mean, I've made my thoughts about Kanye West pretty clear. I mean, what he said is anti-Semitic. There's no question about it. I mean, what he said is pure, rote anti-Semitism. I mean, this is all anti-Semitism. Kanye's anti-Semitic remarks, saying openly anti-Semitic stuff. And Tucker cut a segment from his interview with Kanye in which Kanye said a bunch of anti-Semitic stuff. Ridiculous anti-Semitic jerk. Undoubtedly anti-Semitic remarks. Anti-Semitism and the scope of anti-Semitism, once again, for the 1,000th time, are in fact anti-Semitic. That's the way this works.
Parents in Dearborn, Michigan are also very upset. Not about that. They're upset that the government schools, the public schools, as many people call them, are using queer pedagogy to indoctrinate the children. Dearborn, by the way, has a very high concentration population of Muslims. And unlike most Christians, Muslims aren't afraid to be called little names by the liberal media industrial complex or Democrat members of Congress. So they showed up to their school board meeting to do what should be done. This should be happening in every school board across the entire country, every single time one is held. This is how it's done. Most people may not know this, but the story about Sodom and Gomorrah is also told in the Quran, so they know what's going on. If you know what's going on and you want to support my work, order one of my awesome shirts from my online store at markdice.com, like a Let's Go Brandon shirt, an Ultra Magus shirt, or my new Evolution of the Media shirt. All available in a t-shirt, long sleeve, and a hoodie, and a whole bunch of different colors as well. So head on over to markdice.com or click the link in the description below and check them out.